My friends, welcome to another episode of Deep True Crime. I'm Manny Rodriguez. In today's episode, we're diving into the Amie Harwick case. This is going to trial this week. Ex-boyfriend does the unthinkable just a few days after the protective order wears off. It expires, and so he takes action. And he does what no person should ever do. He takes her life on Valentine's Day. Or should I say the day after, because it was past midnight. Let's go ahead and dive into what we know at this time. Rest in peace, Amie Harwick. The trial for the man that is accused of killing the Hollywood sex therapist, Dr. Amie Harwick, is beginning this week. Actually, this afternoon it should be starting today. Gareth Pursehouse, he faces several criminal charges for the 2020 slaying, including murder and burglary, because he breaks into her home. On her Instagram account, Dr. Amie Harwick described herself in her bio as a PhD, LMFT, author of the New Sex Bible for Women, educator, and advocate. This image that you are looking at was the last image that was taken of her the day that she passed. And she was being this wonderful friend to her friend, showing her around Hollywood Hills, enjoying it. And as her friend described, she seemed very happy. She herself said she was very happy. The 38-year-old family, relationship, and sex therapist was a high profile doctor in Hollywood, appearing in magazines, on news broadcasts, and podcasts. She even had her own YouTube channel that advised viewers about anything from how to cope with the fear of flying to surviving the holidays. And in the days before her death, she even posted quotes that were centered around love in honor of the upcoming Valentine's Day, which we'll dive into that day because that is the last moments of her life. And so throughout this, if it's one thing that we know, people absolutely loved Amie Harwick. Here she was with her ex-fiance, Drew Carey. Drew was the host of The Price is Right. Maybe he still is the host. I don't really watch it too much anymore, so I really couldn't tell you. But she was ready to celebrate Valentine's Day. Here is her with her book, The New Sex Bible for Women. And that is one thing. She was on the cover of Playboy magazine at one time. She became a sex therapist. And, she truly believed in love and how you approach it. And so here she is with her former fiance, Drew Carey, again, the host of The Price is Right. Here she is, he, pictured in the same image, along with her ex, who is now set to face trial. Now, we don't know much, but we do know that this guy, he was obsessed with her. There was even there was a protective order. And so in this, we do know that this guy did the unthinkable in the end. But even during their relationship, he did the unthinkable. You see, she even talked about changing her locks and buying pepper spray after her ex-boyfriend continued to stalk and threaten her. And so she literally bought pepper spray. She changes her locks because she knew that this guy was a danger. And he would eventually throw her from the third floor balcony of her Hollywood Hills apartment in February of 2020. Alleged she was even fearing for her life from her former partner, Gareth Pursehouse, which you just saw pictured here. Now, following the confrontation, Dr. Harwick told her longtime friend and fellow sex therapist that she had asked her handyman to change the locks, and she had bought some mace and pepper spray with the hopes of protecting herself. Now, her friend would later say that I felt she was doing everything she needed to do to protect herself. I couldn't envision anyone would go this far. Well, Gareth Pursehouse, the man pictured here, did go that far, and to the point where she did have a protection order out against him, which was dated April 12th of 2012. And it was a temporary restraining order that was granted under the court hearing. And so it was against Gareth. And on January 11th of 2012, that was when it was it was that she was describing that an argument in the car progressed to to physically pulling her out of the car and bloodying her nose from his roughness. He then took her suitcases and threw them overhead to her. So damaged her. This was an angry guy. It left bloody nose on her and scratches on her. And this is the post that she shared about, that was leading up to it. And in here, she even talks, let's stop falling in love and start collaborating in love. Let's remember how much control we actually have over the partners we pick and how we move forward in our romantic relationships. And she wrote, platonic love is important too. There is so much cultural emphasis on romantic love, but let's be thankful for the authentic love that we give and receive to friends. And you can see what she writes here. Many people are celebrating love today, whether you're in a relationship or not. Exposure to this could feel overwhelming if you are in an unhealthy relationship, dissatisfied with your relationship status, unhappy in your relationship, or feeling pressure to be in a relationship. She shares, I think that Valentine's Day is a wonderful time to be mindful and redirect thoughts about love to platonic love. There is so much cultural emphasis on romantic love, but let's be thankful for the authentic love that we give and receive to friends. And so she shared this. You see, Dr. Harwick, she grew up in Pennsylvania, but she moved to Los Angeles in 2001. She studied at Polytechnic State University and Pepperdine University, and she received her doctorate from the Institute for Advanced Study of Human Sexuality. She didn't just wake up one day and said, I know what it means to have sex. Let me become a therapist. She studied this stuff. She studied human sexuality. She became a professional. So that's why she became a doctor at it. And her website said that she specialized in various physical and psychological disorders, including traumas related to sexual exploitation and issues involving sexual identity and bipolar disorder. And as I shared with you, she published a book, The New Sex Bible for Women. And that was one of the things that she was very passionate about when it came to other women, how to cope with everything that's going on out there. She was a big advocate for women. And that's why you think about this. This is what this book was for her. This is what she created this book for. And in this book, she shares that the New Sex Bible for Women is an all encompassing and fully comprehensive guide for women covering everything from, I'm not going to detail what she says here, but I'm going to kind of lead to it. She talks about being, if you watch Seinfeld, the master of your domain, if you know what episode I'm talking about, that's what she's talking about when women covering everything from master of your domain to oral SE, to also self-esteem, self-care, SEX positions, safety and concerns, and SEX aids. This is how she was trying to help women be be that person that they want to be. She would use scientific studies, case studies, testimonials, input from celebrities, professionals in the sexual health field, and even illustrations. That's what this book was about for Amie Harwick. And she would walk you through every question and provide you with the information that you need to become a better lover and even bring even more enjoyment out of SEX. That's what the purpose was. And so it was geared and made for women so that they can be, I'm a guess, more comfortable in their own skin in that in the room. I don't really know how to. So forgive me. The goal is not for me to be great at this. The goal is to be a voice for Amie Harwick, who was taken from this world way too soon. And this week, the trial begins against her ex boyfriend. And you know, throughout all of this, see, she breaks up with this guy in like 2011, 2012, somewhere along those lines. She is learning herself because she was in a very bad relationship. So she discovers her own self. And so she publishes this book in 2014. 4 years later, that's when she gets engaged to comedian Drew Carey. And the couple they date for, they dated 2 years prior to this engagement. But they call off the engagement later that year in 2018. But Drew Carey, he has a lot of respect for her. And he even shares, how in this post, he shares that, did I go the right way? In this post, he shares, I hope you're lucky enough to have someone in your life that loves as much as she did. And that's what he wrote in this post about her. He loved her. He loved her and still loves her to this day. And according to her memorial page, Dr. Harwick dedicated her career and personal life to helping women succeed. That's also where that book comes from. She created and ran a group called Foxy Feminist that helped women local to the Los Angeles area connect with each other for job opportunities and support. She was all about empowering other women. And that's what she was about. Dr. Harwick's family even said that she was a model, but she also had a passion for being behind the camera. Having aspirations to be a professional photographer. But her dreams of creating a self-deserving and significant world for women all across the area was cut short due to an ex-boyfriend, allegedly, an ex-boyfriend who never stopped being obsessed with her. You see, that's when on Valentine's Day, 2020, she wakes up, she goes for a walk with one of her friends. And the two met at her Hollywood Hills home. They walk through the neighborhood, they stop at a cafe, they enjoy some local eatery. This is what she does. Her friends meant a lot to her. And so that's why over and over you continue to hear how could this Gareth Pursehouse do such a thing, allegedly. You see, later that night around 7:30, Dr. Harwick, she meets up with some other friends at a burlesque show. That's what court documents would share. And she wore a pink dress and a rosary beaded necklace with a cross on it. After the show, she mingled with her friends and eventually headed home shortly after midnight. And when she gets home, she sends her final text. She asks a friend for photos from the burlesque show at 1:02 in the morning. Moments later, Dr. Harwick is said to have been attacked by this man, Gareth Pursehouse, inside her home. You see, she was on the third floor. Her roommate would testify that he was asleep on the first floor and woke up to her screaming. The roommate, when he couldn't find his phone, he tried yelling at whoever was hurting Dr. Harwick to stop, but he wasn't successful. This person continued. And so the roommate, because he couldn't find his phone, he runs outside looking for help. He knocks on two neighbors' doors with no luck. No one opens the door. Eventually, he found someone who was walking along the street who had a phone on them, and they called 911 at 1:14 in the morning. Officers rushed to Dr. Harwick's home and they found her struggling to breathe below her third floor balcony with severe injuries to her neck. She was rushed to the hospital but was pronounced dead just before 3:30 a.m. Back at her house, detectives found evidence of a horrifying struggle. Investigators located blood on her bedroom door and beads from her rosary necklace scattered in her bedroom, leading detectives to the balcony. When when the detectives talked to her roommate, they the detective said that the roommate admitted to hearing some sort of loud noise earlier that night that had woke him up, but he fell back to sleep. And investigators believe that that noise was Dr. Harwick's killer breaking into the house several hours before the attack, plotting and waiting for her to get home. And police, they issued a statement. When officers went to make entry, they found the victim on the ground beneath a third-story balcony. The victim was gravely injured. She suffered significant injuries consistent with a fall. The investigation revealed possible evidence of a struggle in the upstairs as well as forced entry to the residence. A canvass of the area located further evidence of an intruder entering the property and leaving after the murder. A medical examiner would later rule that her death was a homicide, and they made notes in the autopsy report that Dr. Harwick died due to several factors, including manual strangulation and blunt force trauma. And 15 hours after the 911 call was made, detectives arrested Gareth Pursehouse. That is the ex-boyfriend from 9 years prior. On a charge of suspicion of murder, his bail at that time was set at $2 million and he bonded out 3 days after his arrest on the following Tuesday night. But then he was rearrested the next day, Wednesday, after that charge was upgraded because they knew we had enough on this guy to actually hold him for good now. And so that's when it was like, okay, he was arrested the following Tuesday. Then he was rearrested after he makes bail, which again, the bail was at $2 million. And so that Wednesday, that's when he was formally charged with murder and burglary. And that is when he has been in jail ever since with no bond. And so, as detectives, they started digging deeper into Dr. Harwick's past, and they quickly learned that she had dated Gareth Pursehouse, and he had been tracking her, following her. He was even seen here as a photographer in this photo. Why was he there? Now, according to this 2012 protective order that I shared with you earlier, this is where it's like, okay, now what else do we not know? How long, how much stalking was there in this, right? Because we truly know that there's a lot to this. I mean, you're talking about the protective order that they did have on record. Literally, they had this on record with him, right? You can see it here. The first order was filed in 2011, and then the second one was in 2012. And according to the 2012 protective order, now, Dr. Harwick claimed that Pursehouse had previously broken into her apartment and apartment complex, sent her unwanted gifts, watched her inside her home from outside through the windows, and caused chaos with the children that were in the neighborhood. And Pursehouse also allegedly texted her saying things will get worse and sent threatening emails to her and her friends, not just her. And she wrote in the protection order that the one time during an argument, Pursehouse physically assaulted her, pulling her out of the car and leaving her with a bloody nose, as I shared with you. She wrote that he has suffocated me, punched me, and slammed my head on the ground and kicked me. That's what she wrote in the order. He has told me he hit me because I made him so mad and he refused to get help while in the relationship. My friends, I want to say right now, you've probably heard of someone being told that the reason that person harmed the other person is because you made me so mad. My friends, if you are in a relationship and you tried to forgive the person because that person said those things, I did it because you made me so mad, and they physically abused you, I hope you're using this as a learning lesson at what could really go wrong. Doesn't mean that everyone's going to do it. Obviously, no. But the fact is, that is a red flag and you must take notice. You see, the second protection order filed in 2012 expired in April of 2015. And according to friends, Dr. Harwick, she didn't see Pursehouse in years prior to the attack. But a month before she was killed, she saw her ex-boyfriend at a professional event where she had been hired to be a photographer. You see, remember, she was taking on photography. She was really getting into photography. She was starting to get jobs, and this is a big job. And this is why we see him in that same picture. And so at this event, this guy shows up, right? So she sees her ex-boyfriend at this professional event where she had been hired to be a photographer. And during a court hearing, the district attorney said Pursehouse allegedly called Dr. Harwick a bitch at that event and claimed that she had ruined his life. Was it because of these protection orders? What was he holding on to? What was he holding on to? That is my question on that. Because here this event was, and he shows up there. Now, friends, family, and investigators, they believe that the encounter sparked Purshouse's previous feelings for Dr. Harwick, leading to this spiral of obsession and ultimately violence. And so, after his arrest, his defense team files a motion to dismiss the case, claiming there wasn't enough evidence provided at pretrial to prove that he had anything to do with the crime. But in March of 2022, a judge denies that motion and ordered both the district attorney and defense team to move forward to trial. And at an evidence hearing, the prosecution told the judge that DNA collected from underneath her fingernails and one of the doors in her home matched Purshouse's DNA. And officers also found a syringe filled with liquid at the crime scene. Now, while serving a search warrant at Purshouse's home, detectives found an identical syringe with the same liquid inside. Lab technicians, they did confirm that the liquid in the syringe was a lethal dose of nicotine. Now, we don't know what's going to turn out. Right now, it doesn't look good. If he's convicted, he could spend the rest of his life in prison, and technically he is eligible for the death penalty due to the special circumstance allegation that he was lying in wait for her, which again, the roommate says he heard something. Now, the death penalty most likely will not come about because truth is that California, they are working on getting rid of the death penalty altogether. And so I want to dive a little more deeper into her last day alive. You see, hours earlier, on Valentine's Day, it had started peacefully with a sunrise hike with a friend of hers, Cleopatra Slough. I had a fraternity brother named last name Slough, so I'm assuming it is Slough. Now, Cleopatra, she shares, so I got to her house. She invited me in because she still hadn't gotten ready yet. She went up to her bedroom, which was very beautiful. It had this nice balcony, all this natural light, and she was frantically getting ready. And at the last minute, she grabbed this little red cardigan sweater and said, "It's Valentine's Day. I am just going to throw this on." Amie acted as a local tour guide as they climbed the winding Hollywood Hills street. That's what Cleopatra, one of her very close friends, shared. And Cleopatra, she shares that she was pointing out all of these beautiful different landmarks she liked, telling me different history about the neighborhood. They stopped for breakfast at the Beechwood Cafe. And Cleopatra shares that she talked a lot about how she was happy, how she felt really accomplished and happy with where she was in life and very much like at peace. Again, this was also a part of her photography taken off. And Cleopatra says she didn't seem worried about anything, didn't seem stressed about anything. And she talked about her plans that night. And she talked about how she was going to the burlesque show and that how she was really excited to get dressed up and go to that. And, you know, that's where it's like, we know that she was wearing her rosary necklace, her leather jacket, as you can see in this, because that's what she was wearing at the very beginning. And I'm going to go to this screen here because it's a little further back, but we're going to see her in this. This is what she was wearing. This is why I showed this earlier. But this is what she was wearing. She was wearing her rosary necklace, her leather jacket. She had a purse, her boots, and velvet dress. Well, maybe that was at the night, but that looks like a. It's well, maybe this was during the day, but at night she was going to wear that. Yeah, she was wearing that at night. So at night, at the burlesque show, that's where she was wearing her rosary necklace, which we would later find was at the crime scene, her leather jacket, her purse, her boots, and a velvet dress. Sorry, I got those a little messed up there. But and so her friend Miss Tosh, known as Miss Tosh, she talks about the burlesque show started at 7 p.m. and she's the one that says, that's what she was wearing. And they bought a little Kodak camera, taking all these film photos together. And this was some of the best memories that they will ever have, and some of the hardest memories that they will ever have. And so her friend, who would later describe what the night was like, her roommate, she shares that or he shared that he was asleep when he heard something. And so, at around 1 a.m., Amie pulls into her driveway. She texts her friend, Sarah Rollins, who was also at the show. And she says, "Send pictures from the Nomad." She's asking her, "Send me pics on the green couch. And the time is at 1:02 a.m. Moments later, that's when police believe that she climbed the stairs to her third floor bedroom and was viciously attacked. And police, they theorized that Amy's assailant had been lying in wait. So that's how you know about that part. And so Amy's roommate shares how he's jolted out of his sleep by her screams. He later testifies that he heard the sound of bodies falling to the floor and more screams that seemed muffled, as though someone had put a hand over her mouth. That's when he could not find his phone. And so he tries yelling to scare the assailing away. When he runs for help, he gets trapped inside the courtyard and has to scale a tall metal fence, cutting himself, but he still makes it over to the neighbor, knocking repeatedly, and nobody comes to the door. Now, it was now 1:08 in the morning, and Amy's roommate is frantic. He then runs across the street, and again, no one answers the door. Then he sees someone walking up the street who happens to have a phone. They call for help. It is now 1:14 a.m. That's when, in the early morning hours, February 15th of 2020 now, police find Amie Harwick clinging to life beneath the balcony outside of her Hollywood Hills home. Police noted that Amie had severe injuries and deep marks on her neck, signs that she had been strangled before she fell from the balcony. That's when police found Amie lying 20 feet below her bedroom balcony. She was struggling to breathe. Police noted that Amie had severe injuries and deep marks, as I shared with you. And at 2:05 a.m., Sarah Rollins, who had no idea that Amie was clinging to life, texted that photo of her on the green couch. But by then, Amie was on her way to Cedar Sinai Medical Center. She died at 3:26 a.m., February 15th, 2020. Rest in peace, Amie Harwick, taken from this world way too soon. And you can see that she fought for her life. She fought and fought and fought for her life. Inside her home, investigators discovered evidence of a violent struggle. There was blood on a bedroom door. There was also a trail of those rosary beads that she'd been wearing earlier that night that went from her TV room through her bedroom and onto the balcony, and that's where they recovered a syringe filled with liquid. Considering Amie did not smoke, drink, or do drugs, the syringe seemed out of place. Was it left by Amie's attacker? And why? And, you know, her friends are, they're literally blown away that this could happen. Their hearts are breaking and continued to break. And Robert Koshland, who was the roommate that was in the home, he said it's like the sun was ripped from the sky. Now, Amy's close friend Cleopatra Slew, Grace Stanley, and Robert Cushling, they were all at the here. They were hearing the news that the 38-year-old woman they loved and leaned on was gone. And as they were hearing it, Cleopatra, as she's crying, she says, "I didn't believe it." Grace Stanley, as she was crying, she's not there anymore. Now, Drew Carey was on CBS sharing the shock factor behind this. In 2018, on a special Valentine's episode of The Price is Right, host Drew Carey introduced Amie Harwick to the world as his fiance. And he says, "I felt so hard for her. She was really smart." And, you know, word quickly reached her one-time fiance, Drew Carey, and who again host of The Price is Right. And it's like this is where it's like he was not ashamed, he was proud of her. And he says that he met her. There's this producer that would throw these like amazing big Hollywood parties. It was 2017. He says he saw stars all over the room that night, but especially when he saw Amie Harwick, who was moonlighting as a bartender. And everyone has stories of her. They will sorely miss her. This is one girl who was taken from the world way too young. She had so much life to live and now will not have a chance. And now the next part of the this whole story, now we'll see what happens to the ex-boyfriend who is said to have thrown her off the third floor balcony 2 weeks after his restraining order expired. Rest in peace to Amie Harwick, taken from this world way too soon. Until next time, my friends, stay tuned for more of Deep True Crime.